both residents. Thank you. And we have representatives of the applicant, Tony Leung and Karen Chow. So can I first of all call on Pierre Levasse first to address the panel? We did receive a document from, I just have to, don't know why it was interrupted, but anyway, we received a document, Mr. Levasse, under your Turnbull letterhead, but you have 5 minutes to address the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you underrate yourself. You didn't mention that you're a former commissioner of the court, and I think people should recognise that that's a very esteemed position, and it should be mentioned, in my view.
Well, can I just say my all too most esteemed, so we've got all of the niceties today. Thank you, Mr.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair. I'm a planner and a lawyer from Turnbull Planning, and I represent the owners of both 70 Alfred Street, which is Grandview Apartments, which is to the north of the subject property, and 37 Glen Street, which is directly to the west. Both of these properties are residential apartment developments. I want to raise two matters, basically. The first relates to views in terms of number 70 Alfred Street. And I think that it's relevant to note that the design of Grandview Apartments is such that it currently takes advantage of iconic views to the southeast, and that there are actually windows in the front of the southern facade that take advantage of the views that are available to the occupants of this building. The windows open to living areas, and so they are important for the lower level occupants in Grandview Apartments. Given all of that, I support the position of Mr. Yuhana, who recommends removal of the east-facing podium on the subject property at levels 3 and 4. So really that's all I need to say about that. I support the officer's recommendation in that regard. In relation to the property at 37 Glen Street, I note that Mr. Yuhana accepts the advice of the applicant over that from our own submission, which was made in, I think, March this year, that there is no issue with fire pressurisation system for 37 Glen Street caused by the development proposal. Well, I beg to differ as far as that's concerned, and advice provided to me from Beaver Williams is firstly that the Glen Street fire pressurisation system complies with the requirements of the BCA. I think there's some comment in the officer report that there's non-compliances with the BCA requirements in terms of my client's building, but our client refutes that. Secondly, that the relationship between the changes at 70 Glen Street are such as to cause impacts for the existing fire system on 37 Glen Street. As we all know, given some fairly recent world events, fire safety is a critical issue in relation to residential apartment developments, and I don't think anybody in this virtual room would disagree with that. And on that basis, whilst this is not a matter of determining weight, as Mr. Yuhana says, it needs to be properly addressed, rather than the assumption being made that there's a breach to the BCA caused by 37 Glen Street, such as to warrant, and to quote Mr. Yuhana, referral to the council's compliance team. Just can't understand that comment at all. And it's not really, it's really a matter of fire safety. That's really what we're interested in. And we contend, and I think the evidence supports, that the nil setback at the rear of this building is going to impact on the fire safety system. So, to my mind, Mr. Yuhana's blind acceptance of the advice from the applicant and dismissal of the concern by our client is pretty unacceptable. Mr. Yuhana's eagerness to dismiss this concern is shown in his comments at page 19 of the officer report, where he indicates that rear setbacks of the development are compliant. Well, I accept that. I think everybody accepts that. But with respect, that's not the issue at hand. The issue is fire safety for the apartment occupants at 37 Glen Street, and the legitimate expectation of those people who live there, 46 apartments as I understand it, that their interests will be protected. I think that's a pretty fair request. And in that context, I request that a condition be placed on any consent requiring that this matter be investigated and fully resolved to the satisfaction of the council prior to a construction certificate being issued. I nearly said in my recommendation that it should be a deferred commencement condition because I think it's so important, but perhaps it can be resolved with some negotiation between the applicant and my clients. Thank you.
Panel members, do you have any questions?
Not for me. No, I don't.
No, very well. Can I just ask you, Mr. Mabar, if you had a building surveyor fire expert provide you with the written advice on?
Yes, that's all pretty much quoted in the submission we made in March.
Right.
Beaver Williams are the...
oh, yes, I did read it. Yep.
Yeah, they're the 37 Glen Street experts. And I believe that the chairman of the strata plan is going to also speak today. His name's Chris Scott. So you might want to put him up next if that suits, because he's going to talk about the same issue.
Okay, very well. Can I invite Mr. Scott to address the panel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to address the panel. My name's it's actually John Chris Scott. I use Chris every day. I'm an owner, resident and chair of the Strata Committee of the Owners Corporation at 37 Glen Street. As Pierre has illustrated, that's the building directly to the west of the property, which is the subject of this DA, the DA 43-21. My colleagues will address several issues our owners have with this development, but I'd like to focus on the key issue of the effect of the proposed development on our critical fire infrastructure. I feel compelled to address the committee's comments. Oh, sorry, not the committee. I feel compelled to address the comments reportedly made by the applicant's experts in relation to our critical fire component, that is the fire stairs pressurisation system. These comments are on page 17 of the report by the executive planner. I asked the panel to review my document provided earlier to the meeting in relation to this matter. We are unsure how these experts obtained their information, but they are incorrect. And they're incorrect in their statement that this system does not satisfy the Building Code of Australia, in particular clauses 3.2 and 3.4. I'll repeat, their conclusions are incorrect. Why wasn't the information from the certifier provided to us for further comment? As it appears the assessor has made their decision based on this information alone. If this information had been provided to us, we would have been able to demonstrate that the fire stairs pressurisation system does in fact comply with these clauses of the BCA. This compliance has been confirmed by the company which designed, implemented and commissioned the fire stairs pressurisation system, and see that tabled document. It's a company called Beaver Williams. Mm-hmm. It appears the certifier has possibly disingenuously omitted to note the existence of a wall wetting system, which is an integral component of the fire stairs pressurisation system and a key requirement of the clauses in the BCA. This wetting system ensures our existing solution complies. Considering this factual compliance, we request that the panel now give the required determinative weight for the serious negative impact this development may have on the building's critical fire infrastructure, and that the panel make the decision not to approve this development application until it can be shown that the DA in its current form is not detrimental to this key critical infrastructure for 37 Glen Street. We request that an independent expert acceptable to our owners corporation be commissioned at the applicant's expense to model and determine the potential impact on our fire stairs pressurisation system performance, and to modify the DA to alleviate any detrimental effects if required. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any questions from panel?
No, Chair.
No. I just have a question in respect of, so what are you actually expecting the applicant to do? What I'm just trying to get an understanding of what's required.
Okay, so the development has a light well,
Yes.
which is directly adjacent to the window system that have the louvers for our fire stairs pressurisation, pressure differential alleviation. So those louvers and those windows are a key element of our system, and there is a light well of certain dimensions. I don't have the specific dimensions with me, but that creates a tunnel, basically, where the air flowing through our louvers needs to exit the building and go to the upper levels. So it's an additional impedance to the airflow in the system, and it may or may not have an effect on our fire stairs pressurisation. But we can't afford for the building to go ahead and end up with a detrimental effect, meaning that we can't comply with our fire conditions, which are, everybody knows, are extremely important at the moment.
So what are you expecting what are you relying on in terms of the expectation of the adjoining owner?
Okay, so what we're looking at, as I stated earlier, is some modelling by an expert to show that the funnel effect of this light well does not impede the flow of air before the system is built. So you can't rectify it afterwards. So we want modelling and an expert opinion to show that what is being proposed here doesn't affect the performance of our installed existing system. And we're asking that be an expert, probably an engineer or a fire engineer, and acceptable to us, and producing an outcome that we can all understand and believe.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Scott. And could I now invite Mr. Ian Sinclair to address the panel?
Jan, just out of interest, that
yes.
the plan that Mr. Scott was talking about is it's on page 78 of the report, and yes. I think it clearly shows the light well and then the window on the boundary opening into that, or that's my understanding. So as he described it, the air in the light well, that they don't want it to have any adverse condition on their pressurization system of their building. So is that correct?
Can I respond to that, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Scott, yes.
Okay, so the louvers that are in the bottom part of that window assembly, under a fire situation, it addresses the issue of a pressure differential between the outside air and the inside air. So you get a flow of air through those louvers. What we're saying is that the presence of this tunnel that will exist after this development is completed, that's an additional tunnel and an impedance on the air that must escape through those louvers. So we need to be sure that the existence of that tunnel will accommodate and mean that our system, accommodate the airflow and mean that our system stays compliant. Does that address your question?
You're saying the airflow might impede the louvers that are in place. Yeah,
so the louvers mean that air can flow in one direction. They're a valve type louver.
Yeah.
Out and not in. So that air flowing out and then up the light well, that light well can produce an additional obstruction to the flow of that air. And we want to make sure that obstruction does not mean that our system doesn't comply.
Understand. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Very well. And Mr. Sinclair, if you'd like to address the panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to the panel today in relation to the DA at 68 Alfred Street. I fully support the comments from the two previous speakers also. I'll look at a couple of different aspects of the DA. I live and own an apartment in 37 Glen Street, which will be impacted by certain aspects of this development. Read the North Sydney Council report and agree with some aspects of the recommendations, such as deleting the additional podium levels on level 3 and 4, as they impacted upon views currently enjoyed by apartments in 70 Alfred Street. I think the developer proposal to add to the eastern podium levels is a little bit indicative of the disregard of residents that adjoin 68 Alfred. The proposal suggests the loss of the views to be negligible, which I believe is fairly dismissive of the important aspects of people's lives at the expense of capital gain. Likewise, the impact on 37 Glen Street, the proposed extension to the rear of 68 Alfred and the creation of a light well. It will be very dark and very shadowy at the bottom of that light well, where our lift well windows adjoin. That's a 25-metre long shaft. Our lift wells and lift landings will become very dark. This extension will significantly decrease the natural light and sun penetration to my building. I recognise that it's not a requirement to provide light to lift wells. The fact is, our building was designed with natural light and ventilation in the lift wells, providing more natural light and an environmentally friendly building with reduced need for artificial light and ventilation. It's reasonable expectation that greater consider is given to the design of 37 Glen Street, as our living costs will go up as we have to address the impacts of this development, and our living quality will go down if it's approved in its current form. I would suggest that, not disregarding the comments made by Chris or the previous speaker, that if it's approved, that the light well size dimensions should actually be increased. That would improve the light and ventilation opportunities for 37 Glen Street, would actually provide more light to the office areas that adjoin the light well, and overall it would probably have a fairly small impact on the overall gains being, the overall floor space gains being obtained by this DA. But increasing the light well would have a major benefit in reducing the detriments of the DA. I think it's fairly evident that the proposal, that the loss of views in 70 Alfred and the loss of light and ventilation in 37 seems to be of little concern in the context of this DA. I think it should be. The residents of the area are very important in a mixed commercial and residential area. If you look at the height variation proposal, I accept that, as always, DAs will cite other height variations as to substantiate their own claim for variance of the standards. Variance of standards leads to continual expectations of variance of standards. It should be within the development's ability to design a compliant building, especially in height. In the context of the neighbourhood, in the council's report, it says Principle 1 on page 8 of the report, it states, the character of the street is well established and unlikely to change in the foreseeable future. I shouldn't need to remind the council that 52 Alfred Street has submitted a number of times a planning proposal to change 52 Alfred Street to residential and build a massive tower to the west. I would like to think that North Sydney Council will maintain their refusal for that, so that we don't see a foreseeable change in the character of the street in the foreseeable future. In summary, as a fellow resident, Chris has talked about the serious concerns we have in relation to the fire safety. I think the safety of buildings and residents in buildings should not be compromised by any subsequent development. North Sydney residents and Milson Point residents are the lifeblood of the community. This quality of life should be paramount in any decision-making process. It shouldn't be adversely impacted or risked by fire safety. If variations are permitted for height, I think greater consideration needs to be made to adjoining buildings, such as making a condition of approval that natural light to 37 Glen Street, a residential building with 48 apartments, is maintained. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. We'll now invite, unless there are any other questions from the panel, we'll ask the applicant's representatives to address the panel. And in so doing, can I just reiterate that I would like you to address the issues that have been raised by the submitters. So Mr. Tony Leung and Karen Chow, are you online?
Yes, panel, Madam Panel, Chair. Tony Leung, can you see me?
I can see, yes.
Okay, great. So I would, in the process of my presentation,
Can I just ask, what's your role in this development?
My name is Tony Leung, CEO of A Plus Design Group. I'm the architect representing the applicants in the context of this project.
Architect, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, panel member. I would like to sum up the issue in here is the issue of fairness. And the fairness in here is, I would address it in terms of basically their fire safety and view. In relation to, I would address those issue one by one. Let's just start it by, I would like to do a quick, like share screen on one of the items. So can everyone see the share screen here?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so a number of objectors have raised the issue on everyone should entitled and to be legitimate to the fairness of the controls in the North Sydney.
Can I just say to you, could you go to the merits of your proposal?
Yes, I would do that. So what I would look at this is the context. I think it's important to provide a context. This is a compliance scheme of the podium, and this is a quote from North Sydney DCP. The podium is 30 meter in height, and you have the setback of 3 by 3 in here, and it's 4-story in height. And which is exactly what we're providing in here. There was some amendments being made to provide that compliance in the envelope. And if we look at the survey plan, which indicate 55.56 at the top of the window sill height of level 2, 1, 2, 3, level 4 is where the 30 meter high limit is. I will highlight the key important data. And what I would also like to draw a panel member attention to is in the council report, there is an envelope drawn. I don't know whether that was done by council or through the submission by the objector, but I would like to highlight the fact that this is the window head height that I was telling you about, which is 30 meter in height. And this is the view of the exact photos from the council report. The actual height of 30 meter is in line with the head height, which is way underneath the representation of this envelope that is shown in the council report. So if you are relying on this information to say, I need to delete 2 levels of this, then I would think, like the panel need to be informed about the decisions and the information presented in front of them. And this is to show our building fully compliant within the compliant envelope of the DCP control. The yellow dash line indicates the DCP envelope and how our building designed within it. 11D, and there's another view analysis being done by 12D. Council outlining the report and the reality of the actual photo match of the envelope. You can see the computer modeling in here and the window head height aligning with the window head. And you can see that this instant, it doesn't really create any view impact at all for the adjoining neighbor. And then when we look into here, the same thing again, it doesn't block the harbour bridge, it's only blocking the road. And this is again compliant envelope. So we've gone through the same process on the 3 diagram that has been shown. In one of the corner, like I do agree, it is important when we actually do have neighbor, when we do actually have have, excuse me, when we do actually have neighbor, whoop, my apology, Manuel, I'll just start again here. When we develop something, we shouldn't actually take away the amenity of the neighbor. So to put that in context, this is the ground view and this is 68. In the context of not taking amenity from the neighbor, we also need to be fair about the reality that the legitimacy of everyone share the same equal right. At the moment, this building was built all the way to the boundary. There was no setback whatsoever. And the balcony that they run across, what we're building is 3 meter setback, and then comply with the control. They don't comply with the control, and yet they have the whole of the balcony across the entire front to look at the whatever amenity of the park and the view. And to really isolate the issue of, because of this single corner, something is different. And then we're not allowed to have what we legitimate can have. And I think, that is unfair. And at this point, I disagree with, council report on the notion of fairness. And I'd also address the other issue on the neighbor on number 37. In our report, I would like to draw panel attention to this particular document, which is a fire safety report. We have 2 experts looking at the submissions in response to council, and one of those submissions involving in the document in here is we've got a mechanical engineer as well as a fire engineer, and as some of the objectors that mentioned before, the easement, not the easement, the light well, they say they comply. The reason what drives all this DA is because we got a fire audit from council to say we need to remove the aluminium cladding. And we're very thankful that this created an opportunity for us to now upgrade the entire building from BCA and exit, because a lot of the older building, they don't comply. And in the same way, it is important to note, currently there is no easement. There's no easement from our side to provide air and light. And if we were to apply the same fairness, we could have built all the way to the boundary, and then in the same way they're built to the boundary under the planning control. But we created a light well. The reason why we do that and have so much natural light going in is to create more passive light to respect that interface. So and we also have experts to look at the submissions, and this is extremely valuable for the neighbor to understand their own compliance, because as many of the objectors mentioned, they rely on this air well to provide air into their system in order for the system to comply. But the reality is there is no easement, there is nothing, so how can they rely on someone else's land and benefit from it in order for their own system to comply? Because the BCA said you have to comply within your own land. And I think this good exercise allow them to understand their own non-compliance in this system. And beyond that, so this is the 2 fire safety report, and our own mechanical engineer have looked at the 2 systems. They can be found in the file. And lastly, I would like to draw panel attention to the document that we have submitted, which is a recommendation for some of those items like A1, A5, C13, C16, and 17, and etc. So please have a look at those, because some of them really relating to the standard condition to say complying with Australian standard for car parking. This is an alteration addition. Some of those car parking arrangement and the things that we have was designed with the old code, and it is unreasonable for the building to suddenly, it's physically impossible because we're not demolishing the basement. So, and then secondly, is that these conditions which I have on A number 5, and I will recommend the removal of these specific conditions. And other area really relying on basically motorcycle parking space, which I would like the panel to propose that we would consider the existing scenario. We're not really changing the basement, and it is extremely difficult to comply with the current BCA standard on some of the Australian parking, because the turntable was designed with a different set of standards. In summary,
just on that point, can I just ask you the
Yes,
question? Why
please.
couldn't some of the car parking spaces be deleted to accommodate the additional bicycle and motorcycling spaces that are required? I realise that the basement's there and what you see is what you get, but in terms of its layout, I can't see why you can't provide the necessary bicycle and motorcycle parking.
I see. Like so basically, is there are certain elements. It's a generic statement across compliant. The ramp, the vehicle ramp, and some of the turning, they are physically tied, because it is that old standard. Your question on can we delete some of the car parking to ensure that the building itself could provide more bicycle, and the reality is yes, it can, but we're also conscious of the fact that when we have the building there at the moment, like some of the standard relating to, for example, C13, like we require, like at the rate of, say, for example, we seek the bicycle motorcycle to apply to the quantum of additional floor space only at the rate of 150 square meter per GFA instead of the whole building. So what we're saying, what was done in the past, it can be like the past, because we're not seek to increase capacity, but for the additional GFA that we're increasing, we can comply with those. So to answer your question is that we can't have what we're saying is we can't have a umbrella statement to go, well, now the whole floor space needs to comply, because that would be unrealistic. Whereas the additional floor space that we're adding, then we adapt to new control. In the same way we've upgraded our lift, I think those would be fair and reasonable. And I would like to provide a summary, of all of this, if we may. So the story is basically this: that there was one person that go up to knock on the door, not knock to one of the household to go, can you give me a donations? And every single day, they give them $10. And then suddenly the GFC hit, COVID hit, and they can no longer pay them $10. Then someone knocked on the door to go, I can only afford you $5. And that person go, hold on a minute, you've stolen $5 from me. This is the impression that we're feeling in here. When those people have maximize their envelope, they have exercised their right, when all we wanted to do is to have the same share rights and fairness and entitlement and the legitimacy as everybody else. And I think, this is we're not trying to convert into residential building. We're trying to provide it some B-grade building to support the growth of CBD. And in the context of working from home, this building would serve a much greater benefit of serving everybody who work in the surrounding area. They can have a smaller office. This is for startup. As North Sydney become a major CBD, it needed this sort of supporting space. And then I would like the panel to consider our view of fairness, because from a food sharing perspective, we're not actually taking away people's view. We're just seeking to comply. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. There may be some questions. First of all, can I invite Karen Chow? Would you like to address the panel?
To Karen Chow, no, because I sort of like we're together, so we combine our issue to make it more efficient.
Okay then, right you go. So panel members, do you have any questions? Helen?
No.
Gary?
What would you be seeking in terms of the council's condition for the podium?
For the seeking condition is, I would seek on. There's a document that we sent through as and like which is in front of. Hold on a minute. Let me just make sure we're sharing the right document. Council, Mr. Stephen Beattie would have emailed this to you guys already, because my Zoom are playing up, and I have on A5 the podium additions. I would seek the panel to delete the condition A5. The reason of removing this condition is because we has been extremely respectfully designed in accordance to North Sydney DCP 2013, 4-story and 2013. The decision of removing the 2-story was based on misrepresented informations, and with the neighbor having that massive balcony, and then of course any changes in council, any changes that people don't want to see change, but we're simply exercising a fair and share right. So on that basis, I would like that condition to be removed, and then having us to increase employment force base in the area and to support the greater growth of the community, and then for North Sydney DCP, any planning instrument to have its effect and to be respected. And I think the respect goes for two ways. One is the applicant respecting the control and to design to comply with the control. And when we do that, I think we deserve the equal right in the same respect that we're given to council. And it should not be taken away.
Thank you.
Could you just stop sharing the screen now so that we can see?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I will close that now. Thank you very much.
No further questions?
Jan, I just had a couple of questions for is Eric?
Oh, no, Tony Long. My Zoom account doesn't work, so I've been using my staff one.
Oh, okay.
Apology, yeah.
Tony, hi. So just in the Design Excellence panel had gone through, and they had suggested that the proposed 4-story podium presents as a sheer glass wall above the awning line, and they requested that the podium articulation be enhanced to, you know, embellish or add something to the streetscape. Have you looked at that, and what's your response to that?
Yes, we have indeed, Madam. So what we have done is initially the original proposal to the panel was a pure glass block, similar to the glass block you see outside Hilton Sydney with the glass door. And then we have articulation of the texture of the building above the podium. So there was a very clear delineation of clean glass and texture building. The panel reference, if you look at that in a broader context, is they would like to see some of those continuation of those articulation and texture carries through to the base of the building. And that's exactly what we've done. It's not just a clear glass, it has a lot of those paneling and in and out staggering at the base of that envelope. Because
the image shows that you had on the screen showed like mullions continuing, like the,
correct.
The what do you call it? The mullion spacing and that type of thing.
The staggering of the window. In the application before the panel, what we had was a curtain wall design, which is a pure glass form. And in that design, we also haven't yet considered the 3-meter setback to the neighbor of number 70. So as part of that, Mr. Yohani, council also identified the need to respect council control. So what we have done is this design before you is a more textured, articulated building podium, not only respecting the council control, but also taking consideration of panel commentary about creating some smaller scale element at the streetscape or the podium.
Okay, and I had one other question about this light well. Is the light well a new insertion?
The light well is in the design of it. The reason why we actually have many
No,
debates.
but has it been there before? Is it in the fabric of the building, or is it something you're putting in?
The light well is something that we are putting. What we like. I'm just trying to understand the question. We're extending.
Let me rephrase it. Yeah. Was the existing building going up to number 37, or was the building? Are you putting this new? Are you proposing the light well?
I am. Yes, in the context of it is we are proposing not to touch that aspect of the light well, because we're proposing extension on either side of the building where they have a blank wall and where we're interfacing their existing the glass at the boundary. We are proposing like a more suitable interface. That's why we're not building over that space. So in a way, effectively, the light well is an outcome and a conscious decision of not extending the building fully to the boundary.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to thank the submitters for their assistance and the applicant's representatives. And the panel will be making a decision on this, or a determination on this application later on this afternoon, and our decision will be on the council website by close of business Friday. So thank you all for participating and assisting the panel in our deliberations on this matter.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
we will now move to item number 2, and item number 2 is 287 Miller Street, and this is for a boarding house. And we have a number of, we do in fact have a lot of written submissions, and that is the reason it has been forwarded to the panel for determination. And we have also, apart from the exhibition period, there have been further written submissions that I would like to say the panel has also noted. Those who wish to address the panel today include the the submitter, Mr. Paul Hunt, and I don't have any objectors or submitters. I have Megan Connors. Is Megan Connors there on the line? Yes, she is. I can see her. You're off
Yes.
now. Thank you very much. Would you like to address the panel? Thank you.
Yes, hello. I'm a resident of number 289 Miller Street, so next door to the proposed enlargement of a boarding house. So there presently is a boarding house there, which has a very small number of people residing in it. And I guess our property, our driveway is next to their fence. So we drive down under our building, and all of our units look out onto, or our front doors look out onto this house. So in just a number of things, I think enlarging the size of this boarding house, so pushing it to such a large boarding house, I see as really problematic for a number of reasons. And I note in the original submission, there was no on-site manager. So I am concerned that so many residents would be living and sharing common facilities, and this could lead to conflict and tension or noise. And there have been moments in the existing boarding house of probably only 4 or 5 people where I've actually felt unsafe walking to my front door, because I have to walk along a corridor that faces their back door. So that's one issue. I guess the second and probably the most significant issue is that because it is a boarding house, it doesn't allow for parking. And as you know, Miller Street is not an easy place to park. And to have, you know, perhaps 20 people living next door that may have cars, may not, but have visitors to that site, I think the lack of parking is a major concern. And if you consider that the temple on the corner of Miller and Falcon, which is 2 doors down from this residence or this potential boarding house, also brings in a lot of traffic at certain times. So I think parking is a really significant area concern. The people that live in it presently do have cars. One of them has had a disabled park and is constantly parking in the 1 hour section legally because of his disabled parking sticker. I guess my last point would be the blocking of light. And I guess the view that I have at the moment from my front door is a lovely garden. And we back onto the council depot, as you would sort of know, which is at this particular point a big red brick fence. This red brick fence would be metres from the back of this new enlarged boarding house. And I think it would block out all the light and sun that comes from that part of the yard in the afternoon. So they are my concerns.
Thank you very much. Do panel members have a question?
No.
No? Very well, thank you.
No.
Thank you, Ms. Connors. We will now call upon the applicant, and if the applicant would also like to respond to the submitter's concerns. So, Mr. Paul Hunt.
Good afternoon, Chair, panel members. I really was here just as an interested bystander today. Unfortunately, our architects weren't able to attend. So I might just address the neighbours' concerns broadly. Parking is difficult for the site. It is a narrow site and it's low side of the street. So by the time you get a ramp in off the street, there's virtually nowhere to park and nowhere to turn a car on the site. So it's very difficult to get car parking on the site. In terms of the management of the building, Link Wentworth is a long-term professional community housing provider. In my letter to the panel, we have nearly 6,400 dwellings across Sydney that we manage. There's no need for an on-site manager. I believe the number of residents will be limited to 19. And we have an office in Chatswood, which is really close, with a dedicated housing manager that would be looking after the professional management of the building. In terms of solar access, I believe that we are sort of southeast of that site. I don't believe that there's any overshadowing from our property to their property. As the neighbour has mentioned, there is a driveway, and the southern elevation of their building is predominantly walkways and is already screened. The only windows that overlook our site are on the top floor, and I believe the RL for the top of our roof is indeed below that window height, so there will be no overlooking of the property. In terms of the neighbour feeling unsafe, I'm sorry that she does feel unsafe. That's something that we don't want for any of our neighbours. We will have an allocations policy in terms of the types of tenants and the community that we have there, and we work hard to make sure that our communities are harmonious. Not always the case, and I would admit that, but we do work hard in managing conflict within the building, one with the rules, but in terms of the amount of engagement that we have with our tenants. Link Wentworth provides a lot of services and support to our tenants in terms of making for successful tenancies. So we offer a range of services. I think we have a network of over 30 service providers in the local area. And I'll just touch base on the car parking issue again. It's a very, very walkable area. Cameray's only metres away. There's bus directly in Miller Street, and I think there's 15 bus stops within 400 metres of the site. The Crow's Nest Metro will only be 1.1 kilometres away, which is about a 4-minute walk. The North Sydney Metro is 750 metres away from the site, which is less than a 4-minute walk. There's lots of retail. In terms of the social good that we provide, we're providing people on low to moderate incomes to be able to be housed close to their family and social networks, which is very important, and employment opportunities. This boarding house is geared towards ensuring people can be close to employment and, you know, their families. So I'm not sure that I've addressed each of the concerns that our neighbour had. Was it Megan? Perhaps Megan can, is there something, Megan, there that I haven't addressed?
No, I think you've addressed them all, and thank you for that. However, I think you underestimate sort of the visitors and the parking to this particular part of the world, and certainly I don't think it's going to be a 4-minute walk to either of those stations from our house, but thank you. Okay.
Look,
this is not a town hall debate, so
okay.
Normally I hear submitters and then I hear from.
Sorry, Chair. Apologies.
No, that's all right, and thank you, Ms. Connors, for responding to Mr. Hunt. But at the same time, I do have a question about. I've noticed that there is a plan of management attached to the application, and I noticed that there are conditions in the report concerning the plan of management. I don't know whether I've come across a condition requiring a management number, given that there won't be a manager on site. Is there a possibility of providing the management's number so that they can be contacted 24/7?
Absolutely. There will be we provide a pack to all residents when they move in that has all of the contact numbers. There'll be a notice board within the building with all of the contact numbers. We also provide down in the common room, we provide a desk for an on-site manager to visit, given that we're less than 10 minutes away by car. So an on-site manager can visit and be on site and has a desk to operate there for the day.
Right. I asked the question more in the context of other neighbours that feel they might be disturbed in some way, if there's always access for them to understand that they can phone someone, that's the adjoining neighbours as opposed to the residents of the building.
We're certainly happy to provide our contact details to the
outside of the building.
We have a relationship with a neighbour on the other boundary, and I field phone calls. I won't say regularly, but I have what I believe is a fairly decent relationship with the neighbours on the other side.
Okay then, fine. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Just an extension of your question, Chair. So if there's a complaint, Mr. Hunt, the residents know who to contact?
Absolutely.
There's a complaint register I noticed in the conditions.
Correct.
Thank you.
No further questions? No, very well. Thank you very much. This concludes the public meeting part of our panel this afternoon, and the panel will make a determination in a closed session, and our decision will be on the website, close of business Friday. So I would like to thank everybody for your assistance in this matter. Thank you, Ms. Connor, and thank you, Mr. Hunt, and we will make our decision public come Friday. So thank you very much for participating. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Very well. So that closes the public part of the meeting, and we now move on to, so people that are in the lobby or the waiting room that aren't part of the, that are not required for the next 3 items, if you'd all like to